Hi, welcome to Wrokdown. I'm Wendy Stapleton. Well, my next guest needs no introduction, so I'm not going to give him one.
Oh, not that old thing. Oh, please.
However, his life's ups and downs have been plastered all over the newspapers forever. Today we're going to hear some stories that you didn't read about. Would you please welcome the one and only Mr. Normie Rowe.
Thank you very much, Wendy.
Hey,
Hi, everybody.
Let's start at the beginning. Before your gig down the road at the Elphington
Methodist Church Hall. Also in the band was a fellow by the name of Marty Vannigs, who became Marty Christian.
Oh, know him.
And of course went on to great fame with the New Seekers.
He absolutely did.
And Mel Clark, who went on to great fame with Bullamakanka, Give Me a Home Amongst the
Gum Trees,
etc.
But you're
Some
Melbourne
wonderful-
born and bred, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Not far from here, as a matter of fact.
Where were you born?
I grew up, I was born at the Women's Hospital. You know, that's where it all started. And as they say, you know, as soon as I saw...
The rest is history.
As I saw the spotlight on that... I grew up just opposite the Charles, the Albion Hotel, what are they called? The Albion Charles. Then it was the Fitzroy Club, but originally it was the Albion Hotel down in Charles Street, Northcote. The area has wonderful history. I mean, people are falling over, obviously, to go and live in Northcote, but I couldn't wait to get out of it.
Yeah, I know, but it's just all of the areas the same as Fitzroy and Collingwood and Carlton. I mean, you can't buy in there now.
Yeah, well, I had to rush out of there and buy a brick venereal house at. Did I say something wrong?
No, nothing. How could you ever say anything wrong?
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly.
I bought this house out at Lower Templestowe for Mum and Dad to live in, and we moved out there when I was must have been about 18, 19, 20, something like that.
Very flash too.
It was very very flash area.
So growing up in Northcote, primary school, high school.
Primary school was the Merry State School, which was just across the St George's Road bridge. And some of the luminaries who went there, well, at least one, was the late Noel Ferrier, who also went to the same high school, Northcote High School, as did, oh goodness me, so many others, including a state premier, John Cain, and of course there were lots and lots of people who escaped out of that particular high school music stream, which was not really set up for contemporary music, and became quite famous. As I said, Marty, in fact our whole band was from Northcote High School. Where did I start? Goodness me, I was a little kid. Mum and Dad took the three kids, to these social evenings for the Preston Cricketers Football Club, or the Preston Footballers Cricket Club, something like that, once a month. And as a really small tot, I would come along and I just saw this band. You know, there was a drummer whose name was Don something, and a piano player and saxophone. And they played modern dance music. And Mum and Dad were pretty handy on their toes, you know, and they would enjoy themselves having because they were only in their 30s and 40s, not far off their teenage years, and if you like, and they really enjoyed that. But I had my eye on that stage. I can remember it quite clearly. I couldn't have been any more than 2 or 3, and I'd jump up on the stage and they'd say, "Sing a song, Norman," and I'd go, "I'm Popeye the Sailor Man," and I'd sing this bloody thing, and it got huge reaction. And I think, you know, the first time any artist gets up and gets an audience reaction, positive audience reaction, they're done. That's good night. The drug has got them.
Yeah. And
the great shame is I think that we in our industry want it to keep going the whole time. And if you can just learn to know that when you're on stage and you're doing something that people appreciate, that's that, get over it, and then get back to reality, and then you're not you can't be fed drugs or you can't be fed alcohol and just become completely, sucked up by the whole
thing.
I was in Sydney and my agent, June Evans, was contemplating looking after William Shakespeare, not the playwright, of course. He's been around for a while.
The William Shakespeare.
Yeah, but the one who had My Little Angel and those wonderful songs written by the Easy Beat Boys. And it was sort of post his countdown time, and he was looking at going out and doing the sort of pop music cabaret circuit in the clubs.
The club circuit, yeah.
We were sitting in upstairs from June Evans' office, my agent in Sydney at the time, and William Shakespeare said to me, "It's fabulous to be up here." And I said, "In the first floor lounge room in Kirribilli, I mean, it isn't all that high." And he said, no, up here in Stardom. And my eyes went like dinner plates, and I thought, he just still doesn't get it. This is after his glam rock days.
Mm.
And it seems to me that some people are just not cut out for the success that they accrue. And it's a great shame. And the thing I think that sort of steadied me for most of my life was the fact that I had a great family, all of whom stood on the big head notion. Mm-hmm. I'd come off tour after being
mobbed,
chased by copious quantities of young women, and I'd have this huge head, and it was nothing for my mum to say, "You better go back outside. Your ears are stuck between the door jambs. Your head's so big."
Yeah, but you need that, don't you?
But and that sort of always remembering the very thing that gives you that compatibility with the most people in your audience is your commonality. And it's, if you start behaving like a big star, like your Mel Gibsons and all those
but especially in Australia,
they're going to bite the dust.
Here,
well, because everybody knows everybody.
Wrokdown.
When people make it to stardom, they better have a commonality. When you look at Bert Newton, he grew up in Holden Street, North Fitzroy, not far from my primary school.
Mm.
And it's that sort of, if he'd grown up in, I don't know, Toorak or South Yarra or somewhere like that, and went to, instead of Marist Brothers, I think it was, he went, if he'd gone to, Wesley or Scotchell, I don't think he'd quite have that connection with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That general connection. That's not saying it's impossible, but all I'm saying is I think it's easier to be Johnny Chester and I'm only talking about Melbourne right now, but Johnny Chester and Deborah Byrne. I mean, these are people who came from the northern suburbs of Melbourne. Angry Anderson came from Coburg. Lots and lots of people who come from just the north side of the Yarra when it was really working class, and they made something of themselves in our industry. But I think what carried them through was this through line of not getting too big for your boots, and being, understanding that no matter what you did in your life, the thing that is really true is that wonderful commonality that we have in Australia of just, I think my dad used to say, yeah, but he's a good bloke, and I guess it's about being a good bloke or a good woman, she's a good Sheila. But I know Wendy, she's a great Sheila.
Thanks, Norm. You know what else I think too, Norm, and all of the people that you've mentioned have this in common with yourself. You actually started performing and professionally very young, and you worked your way around the scene before you had your big hits and things like that. You'd been around, you'd been in bands, you'd seen other people go like this, up and down, up and down. I think, as you said, one of your first gigs was down the road. You were 13 years old.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot. You've been around musicians, you've seen other musos, your peers and people like that, some of them getting a bit too big for their boots, and what happened to them.
Look, I didn't at that time didn't perceive it. I guess this is in hindsight that I've made this observation, but what that did for me and did for so many other artists, right up until that 5-year period of the Go Show on the O10 network, was that there were a lot of venues to work, and we were just starting to go outside of Melbourne into regional areas and do shows in the halls in Ballarat and Bairnsdale and over to Horsham and all those sort of places.
And there were no pubs. Oh, I mean, there were no gigs in
pubs. Pub rock didn't start until, I guess, 68, 69, 70, that period of time when I was in the army. But really, the thing that was most important was this bedrocking of the contemporary music industry. This part where lots of artists, musicians, and even the people running the PA systems and lugging lights around, and they were able to, I think, in a almost a quarantined environment that Australia was in those days, was able to invent a whole industry. From managers, there were no managers when I first started off. From managers, I think AMBO was the first organisation, the Australian Management and Booking Aid organisation, and these little subsections of the industry started to flourish. We had road managers for the first time, and we had people actually carrying the equipment, and the band could arrive fresh and do the show, and some of the shows were terribly energetic. People by the 1970s and the countdown thing. So we went through 65 through to 1970 with the Go Show.
Mm-hmm.
The Go Show started off with perhaps 4 guest artists, the Strangers, Ian Turpie, not Ian Turpie at all, Alan Field, and 1 or 2 regulars. And by the time it closed, it had created an entire industry.
Yeah.
One of the things I find really extraordinary looking back is, having created this industry, is that there was a continuity right up until about 1985 of places of exposure for Australian performers. There was the television show. In 1975, there were 61 live music spots a week on national television.
How many?
61.
That many shows?
Absolutely. How many do you think there are today?
For live entertainment?
Yeah.
4?
That's what we've allowed to happen. Our industry has been rolled over on its back and kicked in the guts constantly, and we haven't even noticed it happening.
Is it just Australia, do you think, or do you think it's happening worldwide?
I don't give a stuff about anywhere else. I only care about Australia because, whilst we had that, we were generating Olivia Newton-Johns, and we were generating Little River bands in excesses, so Radiators, the church, the choir boys, the bloody,
Kylie, yep.
All of them. We were generating all of those people, and we were exporting them to the world. And we hadn't even started yet. This Demise, the Go Show, along with Teen Scene from the ABC, Saturday Date out of Channel 9 in Sydney, Bandstand, It's All Happening with Thorpe at the helm. We had in Melbourne Commotion, and then we had Rock and Roll Circus, and we had a whole bunch of other pop songs. Then came Countdown, which was brilliant at exposing Australia's talent and world talent, but mostly Australian talent, and gave us people like, Daddy Cool and Sky Hooks and Sherbet. How big was Sherbet?
Yeah.
Massive. And their manager, Roger Davies, now looks after Pink after the retirement of Tina Turner. The sort of, if we only looked at the sort of success, international success that came out of just an approach to exposing to the Australian GP, general public, wonderful talent, which then made them viable in pubs, in clubs in Sydney, all manner of things, made them viable for radio stations to play their new record, because they could then, bask in the reflected glory.
Wrokdown.
If you love the songs played here on Wrokdown Radio, we've been working on a new idea to help all these bands. We've got a net radio show, and all these songs are now available to you. You can find the links at wrokdown.com or just Google Wrokdown on Toot. Wrokdown, helping our Australian musicians.
Welcome back to Wrokdown. My very special guest is Mr. Normie Rowe. Norm, go.
When in the late 1970s into the 80s, you were doing shows like...
when in the Rockets we were signed up in 1979.
Right,
so we were doing all of the venues.
But you were also, at some stage, you were doing shows like the Don Lane Show.
Well, yes, because the thing is that if your record charted, you were on the Don Lane Show, you were on Hey Hey It's Saturday, you were on the Midday Show, you were on, they'd fly you up to Sydney. You'd be on, all of the shows up there.
And you'd get paid. Yeah. They paid their... Well,
no,
your manager got paid.
You're right, I'm being silly. We did get paid.
Television,
we did get paid.
Television is the only industry that requires its raw material for free. What? You try and do that with
anything else.
Let's say we want to, we want to mine something. We pay a royalty to state and federal governments. Say we want to chop down trees. We have to pay a royalty, or we have to do something, Almost everything, if I was going to build a car, I'd have to buy the steel from the people who make the steel,
Did you get paid when you had your big hits and the TV shows were promoting, like, what was it?
Yeah. I mean, it was never big money, but you got paid for it, and you should be, because you're providing providing a raw material for the television stations to make money from. Of course you should be paid.
Were you able to live off the money that you made even in your heyday? I mean, I believe people didn't really get paid that much in bands and stuff like that, but you were probably one of the busiest artists around.
I've only ever had one job.
And you were able to survive on it, obviously.
I've always been able to survive on it. Sometimes really well, and sometimes just scraping through. But I think you have to have 100% concentration. I quite often give lectures to performing arts streams through tertiary education facilities, universities and places like that. And I say to the kids, I'd like to see a show of hands of all of you who, and I know you'd die to be in this business, who would get a job serving tables, being a barista in a coffee shop, I don't know, a builder's labourer, just to get enough money to survive so you can go out and perform. And they all go bang like that. And I say, I would like you to leave my lecture now. And it becomes silent. And my reasoning for this is, and I don't actually force the issue, but my reasoning for this is to make a point that if you are, because gigs are few and far between, and they are getting harder and harder to get. Over the last 15 years, we have lost so much. Johnny Chester started his own dancers off. There it is. You know? You can't rely on everybody else doing stuff for you, making it and laying it out and say, here it is. You've got to get off your backside every morning. You know, pardon me, as long as I've lived, if I haven't been in a hotel, I've got out of bed and made my bed and had a plan from the night before on my plan of attack for the entire day. As long as I can remember. As soon as I left the PMG, because they wanted me to get my hair cut to stay with them, and I said no, and I said, you can have your job. There was a lady by the name of Maria Pereira who was passed on since, but was a retired opera singer soprano and a writer for The Australian. And she had a full-page spread when it was announced that I had the role. She said, Normie Rowe in the balcony-busting role of Jean Valjean in the forthcoming production of Les Miserables. You've got to be joking.